Chapter 19. She was feeling a little strange regarding this. Why was Chuck acting differently now? Chuck Cannon was still indulging in his satisfaction after blocking Lara Jean's number. This was something the old Chuck couldn't bring himself to do. Now that he was financially stable, he felt like he had choices. He needed to go to the car management office to apply for his car plate permits tomorrow, but judging that his car had been scratched by Queenie Carson not long ago, he still had to contact Charlotte Yales, the salesperson responsible for it. Chuck sent her a text about his inquiry immediately. Charlotte replied almost instantly, "Mr. Cannon, please send your car to our canter and we'll have a look at it." Since Chuck was the person that made her the target of envy at work on the first day she started this job, she had a strong impression of Chuck from the very start. It could be said that she was constantly waiting for Chuck to send her a message. "How much?" Chuck asked. "Approximately $20,000, no problem, I would come tomorrow or the day after tomorrow," Chuck replied. "Okay." Chuck put down his phone, took a shower and went to bed. The next morning, he brought the car to the 4S automobile store to be serviced by Charlotte. It was just a minor scratch, but it would still take some time. He definitely couldn't use the car today anymore, so he had to wait until tomorrow. Chuck parked the car and prepared to leave. "Sir, why don't I give you a ride?" Charlotte said sincerely. Being professional and attentive to an important customer could reap benefits far and wide. Her manager had been preaching about this constantly, telling her that she should attend to Chuck's needs no matter what it was. Charlotte kept those words in her heart. "It's okay, thank you for the offer." Chuck shook his head politely with a smile and walked to the roadside to hail a taxi. Charlotte felt a little discouraged. She even dolled up herself, hoping that he would notice. Since this did not work, she promptly urged the mechanic to fix his car by today. She was determined to give Chuck a surprise. However, as she turned around, she received a phone call. Her cousin's name was seen on the display. Charlotte picked up the phone. "Hello, Lara Jean. Cousin, could you lend me some money?" Lara still had $6,000 of debt weighing her down. Her cousin was her last hope. She knew that her cousin had just started her job recently, but she really had no other alternatives. "Okay, how much do you need?" Charlotte wasted no time in answering her cousin's prayers. After all, she earned some handsome commission from the sales of the car to Chuck. "Wow, cousin, did you make a lot of money?" Lara detected the ease in her voice and was envious. "No, I just managed to sell a car a few days ago." Charlotte laughed as she explained. "Is it a very expensive car?" "Yes, it's very expensive." "Is the owner a bald middle-aged man?" Lara giggled. To her, she always thought that only those guys were able to afford expensive cars. "No, he is very young. He seems to be a student." Charlotte looked into the distance where Chuck had left and a grin appeared on her face. He really gave her a deep impression. "Wow, a student? He might be from a wealthy family. How does he look like?" Lara asked curiously. As the saying goes, clothes make the man. He did not wear anything fancy, but you can feel his charisma seeping through his clothes. He would look handsome if he had shorter hair. Charlotte recalled the day she first met Chuck. Even now, it was still hard for her to believe that he could afford such an expensive car. "Really? Can you introduce me to him?" Lara's voice lightened up with anticipation instantly. She had just broken up with Conrad Lee and was looking for a rich kid as his replacement. Her cousin Charlotte must have this guy WeChat's contact, right? With her alluring figure, she had confidence in herself to lure this wealthy young man. "Well, Charlotte hesitated. To be honest, who wouldn't like a rich and young man? Otherwise, she wouldn't have wasted time trying to dress up today." "Oh, cousin, just give me his contact." Lara pleaded like a spoiled child. Charlotte was left with no choice and conceded, "I can give you his contact, but promise not to harass him, okay?" "Got it, send it to me as soon as possible." "All right, by the way, how much do you want to borrow?" "I'll transfer it to you now." $6,000. "What, $6,000? What do you need so much money for?" "It's all because of this one jerk, but I really don't want to bring this up now." "Cousin, please send me the rich guy's contact soon, and the money also." "All right." Charlotte was surprised with Lara but decided to help her. Lara tapped open his contact's information once she received it, and was amused to find out that his nickname was Baller. "Hee, let's see if you are the real deal." Lara immediately sent him a friend request. Chuck was on his phone in his car after reaching home when he received a friend request. He opened the request on reflex and was stunned to discover that it was Lara. He was shocked. What was going on exactly? This was a very private account that he only used to get contact with two people, which was Yvette Jordan and Charlotte Yales. No one should be able to find his account so easily, unless. When his eyes fell on the description on the friend request, he chuckled. Apparently, she was Charlotte's cousin. His finger was already moving to reject her friend request when he stopped. Hold on, this was an unexpected opportunity to get revenge on her. Chuck accepted the friend request. Almost immediately, Laura sent a shy face emoji to him. Hi, baller. Chuck, not knowing what to reply, just sent her a smiley face. Baller, my cousin told me that you're a student. I'm also a student, any chance that we are from the same school? She wrote, followed by another 2 shy face emojis. Chuck was amused. Maybe, if it's true, then we are destined to meet, baller. Are you free this afternoon? Let me treat you to afternoon tea. Laura tried to ask Chuck out. She had already decided to wear the sexiest and most revealing outfit in her wardrobe in order to win him over. I'm not free this afternoon. Chuck declined her invitation. Is that so? All right then. Laura was let down, but she did not prepare to give up now. He probably rejected her invitation because he must have no idea that she had a killer body figure. In that case, Laura took a selfie that showed her cleavage generously and sent it to him. She added the same shy face emoji and typed, Hey baller, do you think I look good in this outfit? Chuck snorted in glee. He tapped on the revealing figure and zoomed in, thinking to himself that she really had a big rack. If Laura knew the person that she was trying to seduce was Chuck, she would probably break down. Not bad. Chuck kept his reply short. Okay then, this will be my outfit for today, Laura chuckled to herself. Men are really easy to entice. She knew that she just had to put in some effort to get what she wanted. Then, she decided to stop the conversation there. Like a fisherman, she was trying to reel Chuck in, and now she just had to wait for him to send her messages. Unbeknownst to her, Chuck was not falling for her strategy. He placed his phone back into his pocket and went to the mall to purchase some clothes. He did not return to his school, as he really needed to get new fresh garments for himself. He took a cab to the most luxurious shopping mall in town. Back then, he never had the chance to stop here since the clothes here had skyrocketing prices and he didn't have the ability to buy any. But things were different now. He had money for almost anything he needed. Chuck strode into the place confidently. He was looking for casual outfits instead of sports attires like Nike-branded clothes. The salesperson judged him by how poorly his clothes were and didn't bother to attend to him. Yet, Chuck was not bothered by this at all. He started choosing what he wanted and paid for them directly. After spending almost $100 on clothes and shoes, he was finally looking brand new. Chuck studied himself in the mirror satisfyingly, looking almost unrecognizable after wearing these outfits. The clothes he was wearing was not fancy in the slightest bit, but they were expensive for a reason. They made him look like he had high social status, and he never thought that one day he would be able to exude this kind of aura. Sir, you look amazing in this outfit. A shop assistant there was in awe of Chuck's look and couldn't stop flattering him. Chuck did not entertain her but instead walked straight out of the shop. He desperately needed some grooming for his hair, so he immediately headed to the district's most expensive barbing salon for a haircut. Chuck marched confidently into the barbing salon in his new attire and instantly caught the attention of several stylists. They all studied him closely and came to the conclusion that he was really good looking. It would be icing on the cake if he spotted a stylish hairstyle. The feminine assistant hurried over to welcome him. Hi, are you getting a haircut? Yes, this way please. Chuck followed her to get a hair wash. After that, the female assistant introduced him to several packages available there, such as executive hairstylist or director hairstylist. He was spoiled with choices. The pricing was not a concern for Chuck though, so he chose the most expensive one and was brought to the director's room. A while later, a stylish and pretty hairstylist appeared in front of Chuck, giving him a surprise. He was amazed that such a pretty female hairstylist existed. In his memories, a barbing salon was always full of old men. Looking at her, he was admittedly blown away by her beauty. What can I do for you, sir? Asked the female hairstylist. Make me look more handsome please. Chuck responded, no problem. The beautiful hairstylist immediately started designing and giving him a suitable makeover. She could see that he was very wealthy just by the clothes he wore. The clothes definitely costed a bomb. She must serve him well. Half an hour later, the hairstylist asked him with a smile on her face, Sir, what do you think about this haircut? Chuck was perplexed at his new look. Who is this person in the mirror? He wondered what Yvette would think if she saw him like this. Chapter 20. He wondered what Yvette would think if she saw him like this. When Chuck was done paying the bills, and was exiting the barbing salon, the pretty hairstylist asked for his contact and urged him to come again the next time he decided to groom his hair again. Chuck was actually quite impressed with her work. The haircut really suited him and complemented his already dazzling look. He looked brand new, and the fact was still hard to register in his head. Who knew that he could be this good-looking? When he was walking on the streets, he noticed many people were turning their heads in his direction. All the pretty ladies who walked past Chuck couldn't help but look twice at him. He stood out because of his charisma despite looking normal. Coupled with the fresh haircut, his handsome face was even more attractive. For the first time, he was turning heads. He felt odd and a little nervous at the same time. After all, people were looking at him in a new light. But as he put one foot in front of the other, his confidence rose steadily and he looked more at ease. From now on, everything was going to change for the better. Chuck wolfed down a bowl of noodles at a random restaurant and then went to the university by car. Laura meanwhile was busy capturing pictures in the classroom to try to seduce the baller later tonight. She chose the best-looking one for their conversation later. Queenie Carson was quite depressed. She was still waiting for the car owner's call. Why hadn't she heard from him? She had been waiting anxiously for a few days, and she really wanted to talk to him. She sighed and decided to discuss it with Chuck later. She felt like she was on the verge of breaking down if this persisted. There was the sound of high heels clicking outside of the classroom, and suddenly the noisy class became quiet. Yvette Jordan, their teacher, was approaching and it was time for class to start. Ah, why is Chuck absent today again? Queenie could not help but worry when she saw that the seat next to her was empty again. That jerk isn't coming anymore, he is totally different now, since he just hooked up with. Laura was still browsing through her photos while throwing a jab at Chuck sarcastically. Last night, there must have been something wrong with her to actually call up Chuck for those reasons. Thinking back on it now, she couldn't picture how she would feel if Chuck really took the bait and went for her. She would definitely feel sickened by that. Fortunately, Chuck did not accept her invitation. Who is Chuck hooking up with? A classmate asked. A wave of panic swept over Laura. She was glad she kept her mouth shut just in time. If she had blurted out Zelda Main's name like this, the consequences would be severe. She stopped talking and threw a cold glance at her classmate, before turning back to continue working on her own matters. Yeah, I think he most probably hooked up with a rich woman. Haha, I don't think he is the rich woman's type. They usually look for attractive, handsome guys. He is not even in my league yet. It is hard to imagine that any rich woman would want him. You can't really blame him for not showing up. I heard he suddenly had a windfall. He is probably spending that ridiculous sum of money in some high-end place as we talk. Haha, the whole class burst into sarcastic laughter. Queenie was the only one who was not laughing, her face reddening at those comments. Following the sound of incessant laughter, Yvette walked into the classroom in a strict manner and put down the textbooks. She glanced at Chuck's empty seat and frowned. What was going on? Did he really get ahead of himself just because of hooking up with a hotel owner? Even going as far as skipping classes? Everyone, let's start the class. Yvette signaled the class to get ready. She decided against waiting for Chuck to arrive since it was not the first time he skipped class. All of a sudden, she saw a figure of a boy panting breathlessly at the door from the corner of her eye. I'm sorry, I'm late. Everybody in the class recognized this voice instantly. They all looked at the door and was ready to pick on the person, but they froze when they saw Chuck's transformation. Who was this? Chuck Cannon? Is this F*C King Chuck? Are you kidding me? One of the students was the first to exclaim. It's really Chuck. What's going on? Another student's eyes widened. It's really him. Where did he get his haircut from? It sure looks good on him. His clothes are from CK, right? I'm pretty sure it costs about a few $1,000s. I bet it's fake goods. It's impossible that he can afford those. True, not everybody can afford clothes from CK. But it is true that this guy looks like a completely different person. The fake clothes look like the real thing on him. This is unexpected. What do you mean they look like the real thing? Anybody would look that good if they were dressed like him. The only difference is that he has a new haircut. I'll ask him about it later. Let's go get a haircut at the same place next time. You are right, he only looks good because of his haircut. I'm sure it's all the work of his hairstylist, nothing to do with him. In a few seconds, the whole class was talking about him. Some were amazed while some were bitter. For a while, the class was as noisy as a market. Sounds of classmates chattering away in bewilderment could be heard everywhere. Laura was stunned by Chuck's appearance. She always thought he was nothing but a loser. Even if he hooked up with Zelda, her opinions still remained the same. But now, Laura didn't think so. Chuck's appearance today really blew her away. That crisp haircut really brought out his already excellent features, complementing his simple but classy clothes. It was as if he was a completely different person, someone who was full of confidence. He was really eye-catching today, Laura thought to herself. If he looked like this last night, she wouldn't mind sleeping with him for a night, nor would she feel disgusted either. What about asking him out tonight again? At that thought, Laura immediately shook her head. So what if Chuck looks more attractive now? Her target was the baller and not him. Looks are just looks, and she should just focus on seducing the baller. Although she felt that way, that didn't stop her from stealing glances at Chuck. So people really looked so different after putting some work on their appearances, huh? Laura really hoped that the baller looked as good-looking as Chuck as well. If so, she would be in for a fancy treat. Laura was on cloud nine just imagining that if she was with someone who was rich and handsome at the same time. It was a pity though, how could Chuck have anything to do with the baller? Queenie's heart was beating very fast. She was awestruck by how handsome Chuck was. Handsome was the first word that came to her mind when she saw him. She realized the feeling of anxiousness when she and Chuck secretly slept in the owner's house that night. If Chuck had knocked on her door that night, would she have rejected him? Queenie's heart was in a frenzy. Her heartbeat seemed uncontrollable, beating faster and faster as she started to panic. What was going on? Why was her heart beating fast? Could it be this was love? Queenie shook the thought out of her head. Chuck was just her classmate, nothing more. Yvette's eyes couldn't conceal her astonishment. The Chuck Cannon of today looked refreshing, and even she was captivated by his looks. She had known Chuck for so long since they had spent a lot of time together when they were young. She had always thought of Chuck as somebody ordinary, weak and lacking in masculinity. Yvette couldn't stand being in the presence of someone like him. However, today, although she wasn't sure whether he was wearing authentic attire or fake, his fashion sense, haircut and overall charisma had managed to even win her over. Based on her high standards, Chuck was actually looking quite handsome today. His eyes shone with a glint of unseen confidence, giving him the masculinity that he had lacked all along. If Chuck had looked like this all the time, by now they would have probably even had a child. Yvette was consumed in her imaginations, and suddenly wished that the baller also looked like this. But it was just wishful thinking, she just couldn't wait any longer to meet him. She took a deep breath and said in an unusually soft tone, "It's okay. Don't be late next time. Come in." Chuck was surprised at her. She would usually reprimand him harshly if he was late. He was already prepared to face her wrath in front of the whole class. With the class's eyes on him, he walked casually to his seat, soaking in all the attention. He had already felt the attention when he walked into the university just now, so he felt more at ease. It was true that improving one's appearance really made a difference. People really do need a makeover. Chuck sat on his seat and noticed that Queenie's face was as red as an apple. He asked obliviously, "What's wrong with your face?" "I'm fine, it's nothing." Queenie shook her head in a hurry. She took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay calm and pushed away her weird thoughts. She couldn't have feelings for him since they were just classmates. Even so, that didn't stop her from breaking into a sweat and hearing her heart pounding hard. She blushed fiercely as her face turned a bright scarlet. She thought, have I really fallen in love with him? Please don't. Seeing Queenie and Chuck exchanging small talk in the corner of the classroom, Yvette felt a small prick in her heart and shouted, "Let's start the class." Chapter 21. After class, Yvette Jordan walked out of the class with a cold expression on her face. The whole class breathed a sigh of relief. Yvette was inexplicably unfriendly and stern today during class, so it was really torturing for them. Maybe she was mad at something. Finally, everyone could relax and their gaze fell unknowingly on Chuck Cannon's brand new look once again. Even though Chuck was wearing imitation attire, that still didn't make sense with the fact that he just stumbled upon $20,000. That meager amount was not enough for his expensive clothes. They were confused, but when they saw Chuck becoming the focus of the class, many male students were jealous. "Wow, Laura, why are you taking such sexy selfies?" A female student was surprised. Laura Jean glared at her. She was preparing to send a photo to the baller, so the picture has to be sexy in order to capture his attention. But she didn't expect it to be seen by her deskmate. "What's wrong with sending this to my boyfriend?" Laura was annoyed. She took her bag and walked out of the class while sending off the photo. Her deskmate could only scoff at her. Meanwhile, Chuck, who had already silenced his phone, received a photo from someone. He took it out and checked. It was indeed a sexy photo of Laura. She even sent him a message saying that her class had ended, and she wanted to invite him for a steamboat or something like that. He shook his head disapprovingly. Is Laura's head just full of thoughts of hooking up with rich men and nothing else? At the same time, he also received a text from Charlotte Yales, informing him that his car has been fixed and he could retrieve it once he was free. Chuck was slightly startled at the efficiency of her service. He stood up with a smile widely on his face. Since his class had ended for the day, he could go get his car back now. Where are you going, Chuck? Queenie Carson had a blush in her face for the whole class. For the first time, she found it a bit nerve-wracking when she talked to him. I'm going home now. Chuck could not possibly tell her that he was going to get his car. Okay, be careful on the way. I'm going to my part-time job now, Queenie said as she picked up her backpack. By the way, where is your part-time job? I'll go visit you when I'm free. What? No, you can't. Queenie shook her head furiously. The restaurant where she worked part-time at was a luxurious one. She wouldn't want to see Chuck spending unnecessarily on this, and besides, she also wanted to keep her workplace a secret from him. I can't talk now, I'll leave first. She quickly tried to leave. However, a thought formed in her mind and she turned back abruptly, a solemn tone forming in her mind. Chuck, the owner of the car, hasn't called me yet. Chuck didn't know whether to laugh or cry at her remark. Queenie was just too persistent. He could only say, the car owner probably doesn't want to trouble you, so don't worry. Yeah, but as long as he calls me, I'll make sure to fulfill my responsibility, Queenie said and waved at him. See you tomorrow. Well, see you tomorrow. Chuck smiled. Chuck exited the classroom, his phone ringing constantly with all the WeChat messages from Laura. She kept on bombarding him with silly questions, such as what he was doing, was he bored, and more. She kept on asking him out, but Chuck did not want to entertain her, so he just told her he was busy. A few moments later, Laura replied with several pitiful face emojis. Chuck was determined to end this conversation, but as soon as he put the phone in his pocket, the phone rang again. Slightly annoyed, Chuck looked at it and was shocked at the caller's name. It was from Zelda Main. They exchanged numbers yesterday, but why was she calling him? Chuck hesitated for a moment and answered the phone. Addressing her as Sister Zelda, immediately the phone connected. Zelda's voice could be heard from the phone. Well, are you at school? Yes, I'm just about to go home, Chuck said. I just happened to be around a university and I wanted to check if it's the one you're attending. What's the name of your university? Design College. Such a coincidence. Wait for me for a while, I want to tell you something. Okay. Chuck was surprised at the turn of events after he ended the call. He shook his head and walked to the school gate. However, Yvette was busy picking things up from the floor in the parking lot. She had seemingly dropped the stuff because her hands were full. Chuck hesitated for a moment and then went over to help. He lowered himself and started picking her things up. You don't have to help me. Yvette threw Chuck a cold look. He had no choice but to pick up her things quickly, and turned around to leave. He didn't want to make a fool out of himself. Yvette's anger boiled over when she saw him leaving. Hey, what's wrong? Chuck turned around in confusion. Why were you talking so much during the class just now? Yvette couldn't control her anger. She was referring to Chuck and Queenie's constant chit-chat in the class, but she held back her anger and didn't say anything at that time. I'm sorry. Chuck was embarrassed. He thought he was being quiet enough. Remember, the exams aren't far away. You have to attend every class. Do you think that the fact that you know Zelda grants you the right to skip class? Yvette remarked coldly. Chuck sighed. There were really several things he needed to tend to these days, which was why he didn't attend class. He also hadn't managed to clean out the house that he bought from Yvette. He planned to quickly clean it up and rent it out as soon as possible. But he didn't have time. Seeing as Chuck was silent and didn't retort her, Yvette frowned and her eyebrows furrowed deeper. There's nothing wrong with knowing Zelda, but you have to be worthy of the friendship. Only then she will see the worth in the relationship. If you're not capable enough, nothing will change, alright? If you don't study hard, how will you expect to be a better person? You're right. Chuck nodded. Yvette was right. If he was not worthy enough, even if somebody wanted to give him a hand, he wouldn't be able to give back what he previously had. But things were different now. He did have the capability now. Yvette's expression softened. Wifey, Yvette, how's the situation with your company now? Chuck tried to change the topic hurriedly. Yvette glanced at Chuck, but she did not say anything since she had no intention to talk about this. Recently, she had been going to the trading company to look for customers. This was overwhelming for her, so she decided to invest the money she made from the sales of her house and hire some good mentors to handle the promotion and public relations of the company. Do you need any help? Chuck asked carefully. No. Yvette shook her head and said, please mind your own business. I don't think you can afford these expensive clothes, right? Did Zelda buy it for you? Chuck was speechless. Why would Zelda buy clothes for him? It wasn't even 2 days since they knew each other. His attire cost a whooping $10,000. No, I bought it myself, Chuck replied. Oh, not bad. It was the first time Yvette had praised him. She had no doubt that these were imitation goods, but they did look authentic indeed. Do you want me to send you? Yvette asked as she opened her car door and put her stuff in. It's all right, you have money to take a taxi, right? Yvette shook her head in disappointment. Did knowing Zelda make him arrogant? She couldn't help but frown. Well, sort of, Chuck said with a wry smile. Yvette decided to stop talking. If Chuck had the money, he should save instead of spending carelessly, or else where would the means to repay others when they extend him a helping hand? She went into the car and was about to leave when she saw a luxurious car about to enter the compound. She was astonished because she saw the person inside the car waving at Chuck. Hey, here, Yvette said to herself with a stunned expression on her face. So someone is coming to pick him up? I have to go now, Chuck said, but Yvette just stared at him, not hearing a thing of what he said. Chuck couldn't do anything but continue walking towards Zelda, whose eyes lit up when she saw his new look. Not bad, she never imagined that Chuck could be such a looker. This was how a rich kid was supposed to look like. He was more charismatic than any other rich youngsters she had seen before. Zelda couldn't help but stare longer at him, asking, why did you dress up today? Didn't Sister Zelda call me? I dressed up for you, Chuck joked. Such sweet words. Zelda laughed as she shook her head. She looked around and couldn't find Chuck's car. Surprised, she asked, where is your car? It was sent to the workshop. Get in the car then. I have something to tell you, Zelda said. Chuck was puzzled but got in the car anyways. The moment he opened the car door and got in, he could smell the fragrant aroma from Zelda's car, which was indeed pleasant and calming. Zelda saw Yvette by chance and was curious. So she is a teacher. Well, she owns a company too. That's pretty good. Zelda opened her car door and stepped outside, startling Chuck. Sister Zelda, what are you doing? I have something to talk to her about. Zelda walked towards Yvette, who was about to enter her car. She stopped at her sudden appearance and asked in a surprised tone, Director Maine, what's the matter? It's nothing, I just want to ask you something. Zelda smiled politely. Yvette nodded. Okay, please go ahead. In the car, Chuck felt very uneasy. Zelda wouldn't tell her about what she wanted to know since last night, right? Precisely at this moment, his phone rang again in his pocket, and Chuck immediately picked up the call without checking who it was. He was taken aback upon hearing his mother's voice from the receiver. Chucky, your mother is coming back.